Hello, everyone. My name is Kirolis Riyad, and I'm the CEO of Enough, a spin-off B Corp social enterprise of the Westmount student initiative that started at the Concordia University in 2016. Now, do leaf blowers drive you as crazy as they do me? I encourage you to share your thoughts on the questions in the comment. A few months ago, we hosted Codinege NDG Councillor Despina Soria, who championed a bylaw completely banning two-stroke gas-powered leaf blowers in, the, in that borough, which is Montreal's most populous borough. I'm thrilled to report that since then, Montreal Borough and two more municipalities have completely banned not only two-stroke gas-powered leaf blowers, but all types of gas-powered leaf blowers. Outremont, Montreal West, and Westmount. And here is a list of all the municipalities where the bans on gas-powered leaf blowers have been adopted already. Evidently, Sud-West should not be on that list. It has not been completely banned yet, but all the others should be accurate. Now, today I have the privilege to chat with the three champions of these bylaws, Westmount City Mayor Christina Smith and Councillors Liz Ulin from the town of Montreal West and Valerie Patreau from the City of Montreal Borough of Outremont, who's also a fellow engineer and currently is pursuing a PhD on circular economy of plastics. Congratulations to all three of you for getting those bans adopted, and thank you for your sustainability leadership, of which this ban is just one example, and for taking part in this pipeline. Now, before we start, I would like to give a shout out to the awesome folks at the Coalition of the Green and Quiet Neighborhood and La Vert, many of whom you see in this picture, which we took before the City Council, where the NDG bylaw passed. Both the Green and Quiet Neighborhood Coalition and La Vert are citizen groups who have been advocating for these bans. Now, without further ado, let's begin. Madame Patreau, first, as a member of Montreal's Commission on Water, Environment, and Sustainability and Water Parks, could you walk us through the science backing up those bans on gas-powered leaf blowers?
Thank you, Carol, for the question, and hi, everybody. For me, it was important to ban the leaf blower, the gas-powered leaf blower, for at least two subjects. Because of the GHG emission, first of all. And the second one, it's because it's really noisy, and in Outremont, it was one of the main points regarding gas-powered materials. So, and I really agree with that. We are in a small borough, and the noise pollution, it's something that we also have to work on, and so GHG and noise were the main aspect.
Great, wonderful. Madam Ulin, you founded and currently chairs a local environment action committee in the town of Montreal West. And I had the privilege learning from one of the committee members, Catherine Lund, who's also a member of La Vavert. And I'm wondering if you can speak to the role of this committee that the committee had in getting this ban on gas-powered leaf blower adopted, and how do you find the effectiveness of the committee on driving environmental best practices within the city?
Thanks very much, Carolis. Yeah, I have to say that the Environmental Action Committee in Montreal West is instrumental in getting a lot of these things passed. We need to take the temperature of the citizenry, and so a citizens committee is one way to do that. Often they bring ideas to the table that the city isn't currently considering, but then we go ahead and consider them because they brought up very good points. And I would have to say that while the committee was involved in this particular ban, this particular initiative, we've been hearing complaints about leaf blowers now for as long as I've been on the council, which is now 17 years. So it's been a consistent sort of cry for having them somehow reined in. And we did put some restrictions on them initially in terms of when people could use the leaf blowers. And then eventually it just became the sensible thing to do when models were developed, the electric models that were sufficient for almost every use, to switch over to banning the gas-powered ones entirely and going simply electric. So I would say the committee was very instrumental in getting that work done. And I hope that any community out there that has an environment committee has a look at that issue. And if you don't have an environment committee, I suggest you form one.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Mayor Smith, we spoke about the science and the citizen advocacy, and now I want to talk a little bit about the resistance and the pushback, which I know you have had to deal with quite a bit of. I'm wondering if you could speak a little bit about the process and the resistance you faced, and more importantly, how did you navigate through that kind of pushback through, the process of adopting this bylaw?
Sure thing. And I think like Montreal West, like Outremont, we probably had, very similar complaints that were often noise driven, but also more and more so, which is a good thing, of people actually genuinely concerned about the environmental impact. And I think I'd say over the time of being mayor, when I first tried to introduce this a couple of years ago, there's much more acceptance now on the environmental impact side, as opposed to it just being a noise irritant. So a couple of years ago, as I first became mayor, we tried to introduce this, and Westmount has long had pretty strict timing on leaf blowers, where you could only use it for a month in the spring and about 6 weeks in the fall. And if you were using it outside of that window, we would, try and fine you, but you actually have to catch the person in the act. And it's largely done by landscaping contracts. Most people don't have a gas-powered leaf blower for their house. If they did, it would likely be an electric one at this point. So a couple of years ago, when we started to do that, I guess it was about 5 years ago, and sort of, put everybody on notice that we were going to move towards this, the complete freak out of citizens, led by sort of misinformation from the landscapers. And this is, I'm fresh as a mayor at this point, and the landscaping group sent my home phone number to everybody who they had a contract with, which is, a significant part of the city. Sent my home phone number with a note saying your bill is going to be tripled. And if you're against that, then this is where you should call Mayor Smith to let her know. So I no longer have a landline, but so there was huge pushback then. And then we decided that we would move to our own equipment and try get as much of our, and so we tried to find some common ground. It was tough. And citizens were not as on board as they were. So we bought a lot of our own public works equipment. We moved over to electric. Mm-hmm. And at the time, there were concerns of, especially for the big parks, like, could they, in the fall, if it was wet, were the machines readily available? Like we did, I remember I went to Public Works and did a test between the two machines as well for noise, like what would the difference be? But a lot has changed in the past 4 years. Not only like COVID, obviously, but people are no longer complacent, I don't think. And I think their expectation of us is, at that time, the attitude was probably more the federal government takes care of greenhouse gas emissions. Mm-hmm. But that's not the case anymore. Like, we have to do whatever, even if it's a small measure. I think the expectation is that we show leadership on that locally. Yeah. And the science is like, you can't dispute the science on this. The noise and the science, like it just makes sense. So there was big pushback from the landscapers, from a few, and then I got, probably 20 emails, all sort of a same letter, saying, it's just the industry. While we applaud you, and I too am an environmentalist. I drive a Tesla, but sort of that commentary. But the industry is just not ready. Well, get ready, I guess, is the point. And the industry, the longer you delay this, the longer it will take the industry and the machines to be ready. Like, the technology is there. So we went ahead with it, even though there was some pushback, and there was some pushback at a council meeting, and they were very angry. And since, that was just at our notice of motion, and when we passed it, there wasn't a question on it. And there hasn't been a question since. So maybe people are unaware, blissfully unaware, or maybe people just, the majority of people get it. And I get that it's a transition for the landscapers companies, and they're all small businesses. And I know that it's tough to get employees, but you have to put the line in the sand and to get to that point, or you'll just never get there. So we, a lot of people a few on my council wanted it immediate, like some other boroughs and independent cities have done. I pushed for a more gradual, also because I want our public works team has to do the same thing as our citizens are doing. Like we have to walk the walk as well as a city. So if we had done that, like we just, we needed to purchase those. It's different when you're a city purchasing those things. So I want to do it like the citizens were doing it. So, and if for some reason it, didn't work, which I don't believe it's going to work, then we could say, we tried it. Anyways, that's sort of been the past. So I do think people have changed in that they are more accepting of this at this point. They're this is not radical anymore. Right.
And when I watched the council meeting where the ban was passed, and I was very intrigued with the statement that you made as regarding kind of using the Westmount City Public Works team as a litmus test of the feasibility of this ban. Can you just briefly elaborate what that means? And I think you kind of alluded to it in your answer.
Yeah, I think there was pushback saying, it just can't be done. And I said, okay, well, if it can't be done, then our public works team can't do it either, right? So if this is applied internally. It's not just for residential. It's also applied for parks. We have huge parks that we love in this city. And, at the end of the day, we really probably shouldn't be using even electric blowers in those parks either. And I think what Valerie Patreau is doing in terms of biodiversity and really making sure that we put a focus on that. And we're trying to in our little parks with our being more biodiverse is, so we have to walk the walk is essentially what I feel. And so if for some reason we really couldn't achieve that goal, then obviously we would, relook at this if there was some, massive crisis and shortage in batteries in the market or whatever. But for now, the plan is that we do it and our citizens do it with us.
And you have a plan to test it internally within Public Works.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Madam Ulin, so one thing I highlighted in my intro is that these 3 new bans go a little further on than the ban at Côte-des-Neiges and DG, for which banned only 2-stroke gas engines. You've banned all gas engines. And I'm very happy that there's, kind of a race to the top kind of thing, like a growing snowball of sorts. And I'm curious, I'm going to try to see if I try to push this a little further and see if you see this movement kind of expanding, not only to ban the gas powered leaf blower, but other equipment that ban that use the same dirty engines, like lawnmower is one example. And I'm wondering if you foresee something like this happening.
I mean, I think leaf blowers are the first step. It could well be that other appliances are banned, the 2-stroke engines in particular. Right now, though, I think we're going to see how it works with the leaf blowers. I'm very optimistic that people are ready, as Christina mentioned, are ready to accept this move. People realize we're in a climate crisis. It's not just global warming. It's really a crisis. It's an emergency now, and we have to do everything we can on our part in the municipalities. So it's too soon to say whether or not these other type of appliances and equipment will be also banned or need to be electric. But I would say there's a good argument for it. Whether people are ready for that yet, I'm not sure. I think one step at a time. But as Christina was saying, like 5 years ago, it would have been a lot more controversial than it is now. So who knows what 2 or 3 years from now will bring. I'm hopeful that people will be more on board with finding other alternatives to those types of equipment of all kinds.
Well, thank you, Madame Patreau. Just one thing that was brought up in like a few minutes before we went live is that you mentioned that the ban at Outremont covers more than just the leaf blowers, and I'm wondering if you can share what you just shared with me or with us beforehand.
Yeah, so actually, what we voted 2 months ago, it was a ban of all the gas-powered equipment. So the goal is really to go all electric, and as mentioned. Christina, in Westmount, we did the same thing in Outremont 5 years ago, 4 years ago. We started to change what our own team use to clean the grass and to make sure parks are clean. And also we changed not only the equipment, but we worked also on the processes because we realized that we don't need to remove all the leaves in a park. Sometimes it's better to cut them in small part and to leave some for the grass. It's good, it's better. So we try to change all this, and based on that, we think we are ready to go to a next step and to go. We want to be a leader in Outremont in the ecological transition on the ecological transition, and so we want to make sure that everybody change. So we give some time but I realize that it's not so much time because everybody has to change before the 1st of June of next year. So not so late. So but we think. So we'll see next spring. The landscaper will have some time to do the cleanup before changing everything. But I think they have at least the winter to think the way they can modify their practice and their procedures to make sure that landscape are taken care of, but in a more ecological way.
And just to confirm, so when you said that you're banning all gas engines, that includes not just a leaf blower but also lawnmowers. So actually, okay.
Yeah.
Liz, you wanted, sorry, Madame Ulin, you wanted to jump in?
I just wanted to make the point that it really, for a small community that we are in Montreal West, it's actually huge that Ville-Marie and then NDG Côte-des-Neiges, Outremont, these larger municipalities or boroughs went ahead and made the ban, because it makes it so much easier. The more people, you need somebody to go first, and then you get a few more and a few more. And before long, it just becomes the status quo. People are on the outside if they haven't banned them. So I feel like, it's the more, so now Valerie's borough has gone and banned all two-stroke engines, it sounds like. That'll open the door for others to look at that as well. So thank you for going first, Valerie. I guess
we are on
we'll
a
see
race
what happens with your situation, but it's often difficult to be the first one out of the gate with these things. But once somebody else has done it, we'll see how it works in that municipality or that borough. And I think there's lots of us who are behind now those efforts, who are keeping a close eye on what happens with these other initiatives.
As I was saying, it's yes, Mayor Smith.
Yeah, I mean, just on that point too, like obviously, we're both Montreal West and Westmount, we're demerged cities. Like, we believe passionately in providing services locally and that type of thing. But we also believe, or certainly I do, and I'm sure Montreal does as well, that for environmental initiatives like this to have a real impact, you are stronger with critical mass in terms, whether that's leaf blowers or plastic bags or whatever it may be. there's certain things that really make sense to have it, in a broader area. And as well, for the people that do work in the industry, they have one set of equipment now. For more and more people that join this, it will tip the scales that it just won't make sense for them to have gas-powered leaf blowers for the few municipalities that maybe aren't on side with it. So especially when it comes to environmental issues, like I think the more that we can align ourselves to help move it forward, the better we all are.
And I think especially like within an area like say downtown Montreal or so on, the people don't recognize borders a lot. Like the landscapers that blows leaf in Montreal West is just gonna cross and blows the leaves in a different borough as well, or a different municipality. And actually I think this kind of transition very well to my next question, which is I want to see if I can take this another leap further. And my question is to Madame Patreau. Obviously, enforcement of these bylaws is going to be a big challenge, and I'm going to talk about that a bit later. But my thought has always been is that if enough municipalities ban the use of gas power engine, there will be a case for the ban of their sale, which I think is a lot more enforceable. And I'm wondering if you see any roadblocks from the overarching Montreal government of implementing bans on gas power engines, not just leaf blowers, but I guess now we can talk about lawnmowers as well, and just have this a citywide ban for both their use and their sale. Do you see that as a feasible option?
So it's more legal option. So let me speak in French because I don't have all the vocabulary in English. Donc, pour bannir à la grandeur de la ville de Montréal, c'est plus complexe en termes légal. Et donc, pour l'instant, pour les arrondissements, c'est facile de pouvoir passer un règlement puisque ça concerne les nuisances. Et les nuisances, c'est sous la juridiction des arrondissements. Chaque arrondissement peut ajuster selon ses besoins. D'interdire complètement à la grandeur de la ville, ça va peut-être, c'est pas impossible. Il faudrait que le service légal de la ville valide ça. Là, je suis pas avocate moi, mais donc c'est à valider. L'enjeu, c'est que les paysagistes, ils habitent pas forcément à Montréal et ils viennent de différents endroits de la province et ils peuvent venir travailler à Montréal. Donc ça veut dire que c'est pas forcément une mesure qui est applicable et qui va permettre d'interdire leur utilisation. Enfin, ça peut être complémentaire, mais d'interdire leur utilisation, au moins, ils sont forcés pour venir travailler à Montréal de changer leur pratique. Et d'interdire leur utilisation actuellement, comme c'est une nuisance, c'est du ressort des arrondissements. Donc, et puis, comme on a dit, pour le moment, le matériel, les équipements, c'est en évolution. Donc, je m'attends à ce que le marché se diversifie et de plus en plus de matériel électrique soit disponible et que ce soit une transition qui se fasse relativement bien là, auprès des fabricants. Donc, moi, je pense que, comme on disait, le fait d'avoir plusieurs villes, plusieurs arrondissements qui se mettent à passer ce genre de règlement, ça va changer les choses et les fabricants et les vendeurs de ce type de matériel vont pas avoir le choix de se mettre à jour et de passer au tout électrique.
Merci. So, Mayor Smith, I want to build on what Madame Patreau just said here around the jurisdictions of the municipalities and the different levels of governments we have. And I want to take this another step further, having just gone through the provincial election, where, environment is a provincial jurisdiction, but the municipalities are at the front line of that fight against the climate crisis. And just the fact that those bylaws so far had to be done through the noise or the nuisance bylaws, not really, the argument was not made in an environment sense. It's like, it's noisy, it's annoying, let's ban them, right? when we're talking about environmental impact of these gas engines or other environmental issues, I'm wondering in what ways can the provincial government empower, support, and collaborate with municipalities so that we have a united front in the fight against the climate crisis?
Well, that's been a huge topic as well in terms of costs, right? And how municipal governments carry the cost of that based on property taxes, right? But the cost of that is enormous. If you look at, and yes, we had, I think a creative way of dealing is the nuisance bylaw. Obviously, that's a local issue that we can deal with, so we can take these actions. But when it comes to transitioning, like let's say all of our, a salt truck or a dump truck that plows roads, and we're a city on a hill, not unlike Outremont where you have, specialized, like you need, seasoned specialized drivers to be able to plow snow on a steep hill. And those trucks are heavy and expensive, but an electric version right now is, can be up to triple the cost of that. And that's changing, obviously. Now, if you see like the electric school buses are everywhere now. I mean, they're built in Quebec. It's like a pride of Quebec that we have the Lyon school buses. So it's I think there needs to be support on that front as we move to this transition period. And if you look at things like public transit, the other levels of government need to fund public transit more. That is, obviously, it's a mobility issue, but it's also an environmental issue. So if the less cars we have on the road, the more people taking the metro and bus and public transit, the more significant impact on the environment. And yes, there is some funding, but clearly I think there needs to be more collaboration with municipalities as they transition into this, right? So when we started talking about this a few years ago, there were very few electric cars on the road. We're a community that has got a lot of electric cars. So in Westmount, you do see a lot of them. And obviously the brands of that, like that whole market has dramatically changed in 5 years. So I do think there needs to be support from the other levels of government just because of the way we're taxed in terms of being taxed on property values, right? So.
Yeah, and one of the things you mentioned a bit earlier is that, a couple of years ago, people expected the federal government to take care of the environmental issue, but now the expectation is more and more also the local governments to show leadership on this. So
and it's, it used to be that we picked up waste, obviously, is a huge part of what we do as a municipality and an important part, right? That's delivering it. That's our core business is we pick up garbage. But that's changed now, right? So it's we don't just pick up garbage. We also we're trying to divert garbage, right? We're trying to make sure we have more composting, more recycling, and recycling that's actually getting recycled. So we're doing small initiatives here that we never would have done. Right now, we're looking at opening our own small little glass depot center, where you'll bring your glass containers, take them out of the recycling bin, bring them to our little glass depot. Which will be like a container, and then we will ship that off island to an actual place that will recycle the glass. That was brought to us that's been really pushed by one of our residents as part of an environmental initiative from residents. And we're doing that type of thing. But for the big projects, they're expensive. So transitioning public works fleet over to electric is very expensive.
I do want to give props to your team on the waste. Obviously, waste is an issue close to my heart, and we did work with your team in an event a couple months ago where we sent waste ambassadors who stood next to waste stations and helped people at the event learn how to sort the waste. I
want to say I'm so happy to know that Christina in Westmount is doing the glass recycling depot.
Well, we don't have it out yet, but we are looking. We're design. My communications team is designing the container and.
Okay, that's like my dream to have that. So
yeah, our public works team has had an extra container in the public works yard. So looking at that, I mean the real issue is where to put it. Right, we're a built city that's very dense. So
yeah,
where do you put it? Because it makes noise, clink clink into the. But it's I think people are much more open, just like they the pushback on the leaf blowers wasn't as dramatic as it used to be. People are more open and expect us as people in these roles to bring forward these initiatives.
Nice.
So, Madam Ulin, let's talk a little bit about the enforcement of these bans. And my personal complaint is that my own inbox is overflowing with emails from the coalition members of sharing stories of people breaking those like infringement on those bylaws that are already in effect in the Code de Neige and DG. And I'm wondering what is the plan that you have to enforce those bylaws within the Westmount. I was in Montreal West.
Sorry. So the plans more
Like how do
generally
you see you over enforcing that specific bylaw?
Oh, for enforcing. Well, so we're sticking with the leaf blowers then. So we have a public security team, a department that basically their job is to enforce our bylaws, and this is one of the bylaws that's going to need enforcement. So we're a little bit luckier, I guess, than some of the other Montreal boroughs that may not have this force. I know Westmount has it at their disposal to enforce bylaws. And so, we've had this some restrictions on leaf blowers now for many years, I think since 2009, with respect to when people could use leaf blowers, any type of leaf blower. They were very strict, 2 weeks in the spring and 4 weeks in the fall. So we have, in fact, been enforcing that bylaw now since 2009, albeit it was not as strict. It allowed people to use any kind of leaf blower, but all the landscape contractors who work in Montreal West have to register with the town hall. They have to register to work here, and they have to sign a document that says they understand and will abide by our bylaws. So like Christina mentioned in Westmount, a lot of the leaf blowers in our town are being used by landscape contractors. So right there, we're getting all of them to sign that they agree with this or agree to abide by this new restriction, this new bylaw. And then, of course, if they're caught using leaf blowers when they shouldn't be, or the wrong kind of leaf blower, then they'll be ticketed for that. And because we have so many people in our population that really are, I think, very enthusiastic about having these things banned, we get calls from residents who tell us, the guy down the street, his landscaper is blowing leaves, and it's December now, or it's September, they're not allowed to. So we regularly get tips, frankly, from citizens who say that the bylaw is not being respected. And then a PSO will go over there, a public security official, and usually we'll give them a warning. And then afterwards, if they do it again, a ticket. So, we're lucky to have an arm of our municipality that can be looking to enforce these regulations as they come. It would be very hard. I mean, of course, the police aren't going to do anything like that. It's not an issue. It's not a criminal issue. It's not an issue that they would deal with. So I'm not sure how. I'd be curious to hear what Valerie says about how the city of Montreal enforces their bylaw. But yeah, I'm curious to hear that. For us, we just use our public security force, and it works very well for us.
Do you want to step in?
Yes, so for Outremont, we are lucky to have our own security in Outremont. So there will be, as in Montreal West and in Westmount, there will be the one will reinforce the bylaw, so to make sure it's respected. And but at Montreal level, it's different because not all the borough has their own security. So I don't know exactly how they reinforce it. But for Outremont, definitively, the fact that we have a local security company, it will help. And to reinforce, I hear the fact that the company has to have their own permit. For the moment at Outremont, it's not done this way. But I know that the services are the urbanism services are looking this option too. So maybe
It's really helpful to have that,
yeah,
because then if you see somebody
it's
who's,
easier to have the contact.
I mean, they
And
can't say they didn't know. I mean, they've signed
yeah,
something saying they agree with the bylaws. So, you know, and that's like 90% of these are landscape contractors who are blowing the leaves. Most individuals don't have their own leaf blower. Some people do, but it's
And it's the same thing. Yeah,
So, staying on the subject of, of enforcement, I want to talk about the larger lawn areas that exist within the municipalities that are managed by institutions like Concordia University, Loyola Campus, or McGill University, and hospitals and so on. There are a lot of larger areas, and actually, when the Code de Neige NDG ban passed, I did tweet to the mayor asking if the ban is going to apply to the Loyola Campus at Concordia, and she did kindly reply saying that it applies everywhere. And I'm wondering if there are ways, because I feel like if the institution sort of looks at you have a lot of purchasing power, you have a larger purchasing power to influence the landscaper companies than household does. And I'm wondering if the municipalities, there are ways for them to take proactive steps to make sure that those institutions, the contract that we have through the procurement processes and so on, are respectful of the new bylaws so that they can influence the landscapers more than the household does. And I'm wondering, Madame Patreau, if you have thoughts on that. And
in Outremont, it will be the same thing for Université de Montréal, but so because we share the Université de Montréal on the Côte des Neiges and in Outremont too, at least they will have the same type of rules to follow, so it's good. But for an institution, I think they have to be proactive and to change the way they take care of all their green space. I think I don't know for all the universities in Montreal, but I can see for the University of Montreal, they are working on it to change the way they manage their green spaces. It's more natural and ecological more and more. So maybe it will help them to go further. And but as an institution, I think they have a leader. A leadership to take, and I'm confident that with this type of bylaws, they will do it.
I'm wondering if when the bylaws pass, does the institution get informed? Like, because like for municipalities, there's a lot of different changes that happen, not necessarily always visible, or there's not always a lot of awareness about it. And I'm wondering if institutions get informed regularly about those kind of changes. So, for example, like if your bylaw takes effect in June, is the expectation that UDM has to abide by the bylaw by June?
Yeah, on my side, I don't have the answer. I don't know exactly the borough is working on that, but I'm confident that they usually we inform everybody with different type of information using the social media or specific communication. So in this type of situation, I think for the institution, it's a good comment to have them specifically mentioned. But so far I don't have all the details.
It's okay. Well,
I just to just follow up on what Valerie was saying. I think it's important why it is done at the local level too. Is like we know, like she knows, Université de Montréal. Obviously, Concordia would be close to NDG. So the larger institutions, in our communities, we know it's easy to talk to them. It's easy for us to talk to Marianopolis, to Dawson, and just to make sure that everyone's on board and sharing the information. And then the feedback, right? Like if it's if there is a glitch in it, or if they do want to see it. And in terms of enforcement, it's always hard to catch them in the act, right? But it's, we'll get there.
Yes. Okay. Well, thank you so much for your time and your leadership. Well, most importantly, your leadership and your time as well. Oh, you would you like to? Okay. So one of the things I guess maybe Mayor Smith, you could speak to this. So when the discussion happened around the cost of the going to electric and the batteries and so on, and you're talking about how the public works are gonna, their test is a public works team within the Westmount testing this. So do you want to comment a little bit on the?
Yeah, I mean, and listen, we fully recognize that these are small businesses. They are often family-run businesses.
Mhm.
They're dedicated to their jobs, and it's not, we're not going after them at all. But and I'm meeting with one of the suppliers asked to meet me, and I said absolutely. And there are grants available. There is stuff provincially, I believe federally as well. But we would be open to, we have you pay for a permit in the city of Westmount for each truck as a landscaper. So we had talked about that, of like how we could ease some of that to help people in. That's not in the nuisance bylaw necessarily. That's addressed in our tariff bylaws. But we would be very open to looking at that. And we are slowly transitioning, and that's why a lot of people on council did want to do this immediately. But we felt that it was okay to give a year, and in fact it's been several years obviously when we gave notice that we wanted to do this. But we know it's we'd be open to looking at different options for that. But we know it's got a cost impact.
I've read an article, I think last year, was Alan D'Souza, who's going to implemented some incentive programs. My understanding that it's not the gas power leaf blowers are not necessarily banned within his municipality, but he did implement some incentive to switch to the electrical, and it's like some form of either a federal or provincial grant. I'll fetch the article and I'll share it. Also,
yeah, he shared that with me as well, and it's that's more for the personal use, and the feedback we've gotten in Westmount is largely for the landscaper and the impact on the landscaper and what that will do to the. But then we've had lots of after we banned this, I've had a couple companies that only use electric reach out and say like, well, if they're complaining, tell them to call me because we'll match their prices. So it's like the industry is changing right now, and that's a challenge for sure, but one that we can meet.
Well, so again, thank you so much for your time and for your leadership, and I think this theme of this discussion has really been a race to the top, and it's really like when I started joining the citizen groups, I actually joined and I had very low hopes that it was actually these kind of bylaws getting banned, and what I was very surprised, pleasantly surprised that the bylaws are getting passed so quickly within the NDG, as I mentioned in that Fireside that it passed within, I think, 6-7 months within being elected, and now the three municipalities kind of followed on and even built on that with even more stricter ban, and it covers even more engines and more equipment. And it's really exciting to witness that, and I really appreciate your leadership on this example and all other kind of environmental issues as well.
And just to answer, I see Deanne Delaney has a question about education. I think it's important to say one of the reasons why we had our ban only going into effect in 2023 is so we would have time to do that kind of education with the public and to some extent with landscapers as well, to let them know, for instance, that it's not even necessary to blow your leaves. There's ways to mow over them and have that organic matter stay on the lawn, and in some cases it's even better than getting rid of it. So we've got some job to do to inform the public, and we'll certainly take our time to do that in the year that remains for people to adjust.
Thank you so much. Thank you for understanding. Yes,
Just to add on that, sorry, for Montreal, they started this year, but the month of May, they tell people not to remove the leaves anymore, and I think they will reinforce this education next spring too.
Yeah, we've talked about that as well. Like, not certainly in our parks, not mowing until June, and so you see all the dandelions and everything. People will ask us like, what's going on, but it is the better thing to do, right?
I saw there was a new plan around pollination. Sorry, I'm going over time here. Oh, hello.
Sorry, we
Oh,
have
no.
an additional participant.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
He, she, what's her name?
Her name is Goose.
Goose. Hello.
Like the bird, but she's a dog. Yeah. So
Wow.
she likes all things environmental.
Welcome to the chat. I'm usually the one who doesn't want to end the chat. But no. So sorry. One last question. So I saw there's a plan coming out of Montreal around the pollination, and encouraging that. I didn't have a chance to actually look deeply into that, but now that we're talking about leaving the leaves on the ground, maybe you can briefly talk a little bit about it, Madame Patreau, quickly. Yeah. Well, take your time.
Yes, la stratégie de pollinisation a été annoncée hier ou avant-hier, je pense. C'est sûr que c'est vraiment pour favoriser la biodiversité. Donc, tout est dans tout. Hein, donc, mais c'est sûr que la sensibilisation, ça fait partie de la stratégie pour que les citoyens de Montréal comprennent mieux comment l'importance du verdissement, d'un verdissement de qualité, d'éviter de couper la biodiversité à différents moments dans l'année, et puis de changer aussi les mentalités pour l'importance d'avoir de la biodiversité dans nos villes, parce que ça a une importance sur vraiment différents aspects, et puis dans le cadre des changements climatiques, c'est important. Alors, il y a plusieurs actions là, je les ai pas toutes en tête, mais je vous invite à aller voir le plan de la ville de Montréal et d'assister aussi peut-être à la COP 15 et à toutes les activités qui vont avoir lieu en même temps que la COP 15 pour parler biodiversité, parce que je pense que la biodiversité, ça s'inscrit vraiment dans le sujet d'aujourd'hui.
And we have the COP 20, the COP 15 in Montreal.
Yeah.
In December. It's a very timely conversation. Well, once again, thank you again, and I wish you all a lovely evening, and thank you for staying a little bit extra, a little bit more time, and answering the question. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Very welcome.
Thank you, everybody. Merci.
Bye.
Au revoir.